Welcome to Dialogue Choices podcast. Andrew's not here. He didn't sleep well. I also slept weird. Sleep weird. Sleep is weird lately. So I keep waking up at 8 a.m., which for a lot of normal people is fine, but for me is like, oh fuck, that's not what I budgeted for when I went to sleep. And I keep waking up at 8 a.m. and not being able to go back to sleep. So I'm like, I need to like specifically fix this by trying to just go to sleep at midnight now. That's the obvious like pattern recognition solution to this problem. So last night I went to sleep at midnight, and when did I wake up? 10:30. So fuck,
you caught up to the lack of sleep from other nights.
So I'm just struggling where I'm like, oh my god, damn it. I'm like, it'll be a bonus thing. Like I'll go to sleep early and I'll even get some writing done before the podcast. It's like I barely had time to like order a shitty breakfast and roll out of bed before the podcast.
I have to teach you about the alarm feature on your phone.
Snapping awake a little. I don't want to have an alarm. Alarms make me sleep worse because I'm thinking about how much. Because I setting an alarm only makes me think about how much time is left before I'm supposed to be woken up by the alarm, which makes me sleep less because it keeps me up.
Oh, I see.
Because my brain is stupid.
I can't. My sleep disorder makes it so that if I don't have an alarm, like if I'm not forcefully woken up by something, I will not wake up. So like last night for me, I'm in the complete opposite boat. I went to bed at like 7:30 because I was really tired after packing a bunch, and then I woke up at like midnight because my cats were being annoying, and then I was up for like an hour or two, and then went back to sleep, and I slept until like 10:45. I will just sleep for 12 hours in a night because whatever, like I'm not gonna wake up if I don't have to wake up. So yeah, I could never be you. I could never sleep without an alarm.
I'm in the same boat as Keith, and it's a rocky boat. I don't like it. On Friday,
sleep just gets worse as you get older. It just stops doing it right. And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, but my problem is exactly yours. Like I wake up at early, basically. So I went to sleep at 6:30 in the morning because of Zomboid, and then I woke up at 9, which is my normal wake up time, and I was not sleepy. And I'm like, why? I stayed in bed for like half an hour. I was like, this is stupid. I'm just gonna play some Overwatch, and I play Overwatch, and then of course like in comes midnight because we also record on Saturday, so I need to stay up late. But in comes midnight, and I was like, oh, I'm super groggy. I'm just gonna go to bed. And as I see my bed, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna go to bed for 3 hours, which was my plan actually. I'm just gonna go to sleep. So I messaged you on Discord and be like, okay, no recording for me tonight.
You meant you're going to sleep now and not in 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
I can be exhausted and then lay down in bed and then not sleep, and it drives me fucking insane. I'm just like, why? I was literally falling asleep watching TV downstairs. Like, why just me dragging myself to bed wake? Like, why am I awake now? Like, it makes me genuinely think like I should just lay down and stay asleep on the couch and just give up.
Yeah,
because it's like maybe I'll just win.
You could watch TV on your phone,
but then people will arrive and then fuck that up for me. TV on the phone isn't like as passive. Like audio on phones is worse and more irritating to listen to.
But you want to sleep.
So it makes you more awake.
It's irritating.
Yeah, like the audio on phone is more awake making because of how shitty and irritating the audio is. And it has way more ads. Like nowadays, the quote unquote TV is of course on demand video with 0 ads. Wait, and like a video going on for like 40 plus minutes. But fucking, I don't have YouTube Red. It's also not called. It also hasn't been called YouTube Red forever,
or whatever it's called. I never see ads on my phone. What's wrong with my phone?
Yeah, I never see ads on my phone either. I pay for every premium service to get rid of ads. I ad block everything. Like I don't think I've seen an ad in friggin' 10 years at this point.
I don't want to pay for YouTube Red on my phone because I still can't get my stupid phone to like use any of the actual YouTube accounts I use. My phone is its own completely separate YouTube account because I can't get it to switch to any of the ones that I actually use. It just won't because Google's stupid, and I have a Google, like, because it's an Android phone. It's like you have to use the email of your phone for your YouTube account. I'm like,
you don't.
no,
You can just log in.
I've never successfully gone to Switch, and I've tried several times. I hate phone apps. They're evil.
So weird.
They
So
hate.
weird.
They're designed to hate me. Like they go out of their way to be unusable.
They very much
I don't
are.
understand
Just log
why
out
every
of your
phone app is the worst
your phone
thing.
email and switch over to the other email.
It doesn't
That's all
work.
You need to do.
I promise you, I've tried that multiple times, and it just
The
doesn't.
fact that you even have a phone email that is separate from your other emails is weird.
It's really weird. Yeah.
I think my phone email is my more authentic email than my YouTube email. But it's just
Well, then
like
just
The real Keith
but I'm just
Ballard.
like, just let me use.
at
But I'm like,
email.
just let me sign into the actual YouTube accounts I use. And it's like, nah. Mysterious. Like, so I've got my video essay YouTube account. I've got my Let's Play YouTube account. And I've got this mysterious bonus YouTube account on my phone that is, like, for the longest time was just Jenny Nicholson videos. Like, it's like, well, you watch 2 Jenny Nicholson videos, we're just gonna recommend those on loop forever and never expand beyond this.
I don't.
Because every time
those are not
every time
good
it tells me
default
to watch anything else, I'm like, oh, this is way worse. Let's go back to Jenny Nicholson.
Yeah, YouTube recommendations are cursed.
Yeah, I have just my one master Google account that I then have brand pages for all of my other stuff. So like my Let's Play channel is just like a brand page underneath my regular personal Google account that I'm signed into on my phone. So like if I want to leave comments, I just switch over to the Toaster brand, and then I leave comments, and then I switch back to my main brand, and that's where I have my YouTube Premium and all that stuff. And it's easy, you know. I don't need to worry about it ever. I use my phone app for YouTube for everything. Like that's 95% of my YouTube watching is on an app.
Phones are
No,
evil,
I watch a lot
and
on
they're
my
out to get
computer.
me.
Regarding the YouTube recommendations, do you guys remember there was a time where we could see why a video was recommended to us? Every once in a while it would show up, why was this recommended to me? And it's like, because you watched this video, or because, you know, the viewers
Like
of this channel.
a percentage
also
of all of my comments is people being like,
Yeah.
why is this in my feed? I'm like, I don't know, maybe you comment on it more, that'll fix it.
that absolutely will. Yeah.
People just not understanding on a basic level how YouTube works. It's like, well, you're engaging with it, so, and you clicked on it, so you're telling them it was right.
But there's different types of recommendations that YouTube makes. And there's one in particular that I wish YouTube wouldn't do it, which is because YouTube makes a lot of money out of this channel. Recommendations, don't like those. It's usually the ones that get recommended to me and they have like 10 million views already. I'm like, you don't need one more view. Just never recommend this channel.
So all the people that just default to it's basically just all the stuff that it just recommends to you if you just make a new, if you just enter YouTube with no context.
Yeah.
Have wanting to say log in or make a new account, all these other things that are exactly the opposite of my point.
Being Portuguese is really good for that because there's so much stuff in Portuguese and that YouTube recommends, and I never watch anything in Portuguese on my YouTube. And it's like a red flag. I see Portuguese words, never recommend, because I know it's not because of my viewing habits. It's 100% of the time. It's always because of just, you know, geo things. And it's funny.
You guys heard it here. Colonel hates Portugal.
I don't hate Portugal. I hate Portuguese. It's different. All of my stuff is in English for many years now, actually.
That's a trip. You still use Portuguese every day, don't you?
Well, every day,
like for work and everything. I mean, like,
no, I work for an international company.
Oh,
so yeah, I used to work for a Portuguese company, when
you're just gonna slowly self-isolate from the country you live in, until you forget how to talk to anyone.
Nah, I just I talk to my friends, so that's it.
I don't mean to interrupt, but Keith just posted the first section of our playthrough of Black Sad on his Patreon, and he was recording it on the Discord call. And I'm just noticing that the end of the video for Keith's works correctly. But mine didn't on my stream. That's fucked up.
I told you that my Discord recording worked fine.
I had no idea. Wow.
I
This
told
is
you
what I
with
get.
words.
I didn't even understand what you were saying, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, this is brutal.
That's the thing.
I can't believe this.
That's what that was my evidence that just your recording was fucking up. Like it was like the, I mean, like, you know, the collective everything running at once
Yeah.
was specifically fucking with your OBS, because like not only was the game running fine on your computer, it was running fine on Discord. So I have a perfectly fine
No.
recording to just cut to for that chunk.
No, but that's the thing, is that the game for me was running like dog shit. I mean, I could see it, but it was not running well. And my
Wait, so
OBS
I was getting
was...
so I was getting it in real time, but you on your computer were also watching a slideshow?
Yes. Yeah, it was going at like 15 frames per second. That's why I'm
I mean,
stunned.
that's different. That's a low frame rate is
Yeah.
different from the slideshow you were recording.
Yeah, but your video looks better than what I saw when I was playing. So there is something weird going on there with, I think it was the game freaking out that I was recording it on multiple sources. That's wacky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like you and I, and maybe Colonel can attest to this, but like, games will work great until you need to make content out of them with other people. Because I feel like you and I have had miserable experiences trying to record like co-op recordings of things. Because between Fear and Hunger and Black Sat,
Things
it's
have
been
been
a
fine.
nightmare.
Black Sat had Fear and
man.
Hunger wasn't even a technical problem. It was just a video game problem.
Well, I
It
mean,
was
Fear and Hunger had a technical
it
problem
crashed,
where
like,
it just
twice.
randomly stopped recording your voice at one point for
That
reasons
wasn't-
I don't fully
well,
understand.
That wasn't Fear and Hunger. That was just your computer was losing its mind. It was seemingly tied to the
Yeah.
fact that your monitors kept turning off over and over again that day.
Yeah.
And so something just
But
broke.
I don't know what was up with that, but it only ever happened during Fear and Hunger. It hasn't happened again since. So
Yeah. If you ever think
It is
that a Let's
brutal.
Player sounds kind of negative or something, sometimes it's because the very act of trying to make Let's Plays is so fucking stressful and full of technical troubleshooting that you're just like, by the time you're getting anything done, you're like, do I even record today, or do I just give up for this week and come back on when I'm in a better mood? And just like
literally,
and just
I've been in that mode for a
don't do
couple
my
weeks.
job because people will complain I did my job.
But
Like
you were
because
grumpy.
if you don't do it, people are like, "What's wrong with you? You have the easiest job in the world." But then if you do actually commit to bad mood recording, then people are like, "What the fuck? Why'd you do this if you're obviously in a bad mood? It just ruins the thing for everyone." It's like you can like literally just
Aw.
be in headspaces that make it impossible to do this. It's weird.
That's a nice thing to say, though, because like when I record and when I'm in a good mood, it also ruins the things for everyone. 'Cause actually, I'm still going through Mass Effect 3. The more energetic I am, and the more like hyped up I am about recording, the more nitpicky I get. To the point where I like in editing, I'm like, okay, I didn't need to be nitpicky. I was right, but I didn't need to be nitpicky in a row, like 7 times in a row. Let's take out
You're
like the
having
middle.
too much fun being mean.
Yeah, because like every line is something for me to comment on, or you know, I'm just that kind of jerk, really. But it's either like tiny things, like maybe the pronunciation, the enunciation of a word wasn't correct, and it sort of gave it a different meaning because it's the meaning that you would think is if you just read the sentence by itself, but in the context, it needed a different enunciation. Or it's stuff like something that grinds my gears, and Mass Effect actually does that quite a lot, is when characters riv on each other. Like, I don't like that in real life, but like from a storytelling perspective, when characters just are mean to each other for fun, the game, like people write that as a comedy bit, and I don't know what kind of it's not funny. So I'm saying
you just find it grating.
Those kinds
So,
of
yeah,
interactions are often just lead to sincere bad moods behind the scene, and the person that thinks that it doesn't is often making it worse because they are unaware of how they're like frustrating the people they're talking to.
yeah, like Vega and what's his name? I forget. The 2 guys in the engine bay or whatever the last level is of the ship in Mass Effect 3. There's the James Vega, who is a companion of Shepard, and there's the flyer of the shuttle, the little shuttle that takes you to the ship, to the planets and stuff. And they talk to each other a bunch. Well, at least at the beginning of the game, they talk to each other a bunch. Those are the ones that are a little bit ribby. but not as bad as that other guy that only talks about like pervert stuff. The one in the actual engine bay, who there's two engineers right next to each other, and there's no, not Garrett, no, secondary characters, secondary characters.
There's two tech people that are always like bantering back and forth because they're next to each other, and the later games tried to have people on the ship interact, but they could only really do it in really specific canned scenes or by having the people just share a room the entire game.
Mm-hmm. And like all of his lines are about pervert stuff. Like, it's because of boobs, it's because of sex, it's because of a pervert joke. It's and the other engineer, she asks him to stop a couple of times.
Ow.
Oh, bless you. She asks him to stop a couple of times, which makes it bad. Because if she didn't ask him to stop, it would be like, okay, this is like, he's a pervert, whatever, it's fine. But at least, she's in on the joke or whatever, even if she's like, ugh, whatever. But no, she asked him to not do it, and he keeps doing it, which is no.
Annoying. Yeah, Mass Effect 3 has, I won't get into any spoilers because I know you're not finished with it, but I didn't even finish the game because I quit way too early because I just got so sick of how that game does dialogue in comparison to the rest of the trilogy. And just for the simple reason that for the first 12 hours of Mass Effect 3, Shepard constantly talks without the player input. Which is weird because the rest of the trilogy, every single line of dialogue Shepard has is chosen by the player. But because Mass Effect 3 is trying to do this big grand story thing, there is dialogue that quote unquote has to happen to make things make sense. And for whatever reason, they just make Shepard the person who says it. So it's weird because you'll play these two games and build your Shepard and build your context around them. And then the third game comes around and they can be just a completely different character than the person that you played. Because they just will have dialogue and will say things and do things that you are not playing. It's just it's so hard to keep consistency when that's happening that I just got irritated at one point. And I think it was right after Garrus's, when you re-recruiting Garrus or whatever on his little war. I was just I can't keep playing this because they just constantly are having this character talk and act in a way that is not how I was playing them. Why are they doing this? So I got out of Mass Effect 3 early. I did not like that game whatsoever.
I lost my connection to my Shepard in the second game already, so I'm not feeling that as much in the third game, but I definitely see what you mean. It's a very linear game in regards to the dialogues, and even the choices mostly just are for flavor. Not all the time, but especially the main choices tend to be actually, choices. But a lot of the Renegade or Paragon choices, which are already binary, they're absolutely just flavor a lot of the time. You speak of Garrus, actually, that was another nitpick that I had. Can you believe Garrus? So Garrus, for those who don't know, who are not in the know of Mass Effect, he's introduced in the first game, and it sort of stays with that sort of personality throughout the series. He's introduced as this cop who's willing to go beyond the rules of the police to catch the criminals and to punish the unjust and whatever. And he says things like, oh, the police, or it's not called police, it's the CSEC or whatever. But he's like, oh, the police should have more rights to do this, or should be tougher on crime and all that. So he's that kind of person, is that kind of character. And he has a line in the game where he says, I can't believe I didn't think of this before, but sometimes the world needs strong rulers to put things in the right way. He says this after
this character.
He said, this is in character for him to say something like this, but so I don't have a problem with him saying it, but I do have a problem with the first part of that sentence where he says, I can't believe I haven't thought of this before. And I'm like, motherfucker, you've been thinking this, if not saying this outright, since the beginning of the series.
Yeah.
He's a He's
I
a
know that
handful.
he's
Garrus
supposed
is
to-
like the worst version of Batman, where it's like, oh no, he's like Batman if Batman literally was just like outright, it's like a cop.
Yeah.
Like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Literally, he is a cop. Yeah.
He's supposed to
Yeah.
he's definitely supposed to mirror the protagonist's journey of like the core binary that they're trying to set up between like Renegade and Paragate. Renegade and Paragade. Drink your Paragade. The Paragon and Renegade situation.
Oh, so maybe that's why he said that to me, because I'm renegade. I'm heavy renegade.
Maybe, yeah, but like Shepard's a cop. Shepard's a
Yeah, as
super
well.
space cop that gets extra space cop rights to be an even better space cop.
Well,
and then
specifically, Shepard is a Fed that then becomes
That's
a member of
true.
a PMC and then is re-recruited by the Feds to be a super Fed.
Yeah.
But
Oh
then
my God.
specifically, like Garrus tries to join you specifically because you have these like extrajudicial powers and wants to become a super cop with you essentially and get past all of the stuff that's supposed to hold him in place at all. And then like the core and like to an extent like the core choice in his loyalty mission is whether or not in his side quest before they were called loyalty missions in the first game is to make a choice about whether or not he should actually follow through with enacting his own justice or not, or if he should like go with the system essentially. But then in the next game, he's still always Seraphim or whatever he's called, like Archangel. Like your choice does not affect whether or not he becomes Archangel. And so like a general problem throughout all of Mass Effect is that they had this ambitious idea to have elements of your choices carry on from game to game. But the most impactful ones are just whether or not characters are alive. And not because and I'm aware that they usually replace them with like an analogous rando character you care less about, like some dude that's a Solarian scientist. Whoa. But like the character you like is still dead in each of those cases. So like that's the most impactful thing that actually happens.
So
But
he died.
aside from character deaths, you get almost no actual like almost never actually have super impactful choices. And one of the roughest things there is that like spoilers for Mass Effect earlier on and stuff like, but like, I don't need to say the specific thing, but like the stuff that happens in like the Mass Effect 2 DLCs that sets up Mass Effect 3 and so on, like literally the most impactful things that Shepard has ever done in the universe, which are massive, massive moral conundrums and worrying, distressing things in many cases, are choices you don't make. And so it's like at that point, it's like, I'm not surprised that Mass Effect 3 opens with a bunch of linear dialogue kind of just playing out where they're like, well, this is the one scenario you're in at this point no matter what, so here's the functional dialogue that has to happen to move the scene along so we can get back to the part where you play somewhat non-linearly ish, is because like literally they've already taken the control out of your hands by having the DLCs happen to Mass Effect 2 that are all canon, which are the reason why the beginning of the game in 3 is even happening, and you have to have made those choices even, and there was no splitting there. It was just so, they set up a scenario that to them justified being so obviously the only choice that you have to make no matter what, that you become this very specific character that did this really specific thing that everyone has a really specific unifying opinion over, or that overrides literally any reputation you would have had for anything else you've ever done because of how much of an act that was. So that, like, honestly, the Arrival DLC is like the single worst part of the Mass Effect trilogy for several reasons. It's already the worst part of it's already the worst part of Mass Effect 2, just from its writing leading up to that point. But by the end, it's just so bad and does so much damage to the games in its need to set up the third game that like it's just the idea that you're going to make choices was never going to recover from this anyway.
I didn't play the DLCs for Mass Effect 2 because they're not available on Steam. So the Steam version, which is what most people play, don't have that.
Yep, that's canonical. Like literally, the Mass Effect 3 just opens with the game talking about the Mass Effect 2 DLC, assuming you played it, because it's the entire reason you're there.
I didn't really miss. Oh well, I still don't know who the kid is, but I have my theories. And
the kid's not from a DLC, but you're on trial for the DLC.
Oh, okay.
That's why that's the point of the beginning of Mass Effect 3.
I'm okay with skipping past like that sort of thing. Like I grew up, like I started, my first Baldur's Gate is Baldur's Gate 2, which starts in media res. It's like right after Mass Effect 1, or it's actually not right. It's not Mass Effect. Sorry, Baldur's Gate 1. There's like the intro is very. It kind of requires you to know what happened in the first game. And I also played Fallout 2 before I played Fallout 1, but Baldur's Gate in particular was like my first big RPG. I think I played it before. Maybe I don't know if I did play it before Fallout 2, but either way, it would have been one of the first. And like, I'm okay with missing the context. I'm there for the fun along the way. But yeah, I mean, it was ambitious of them to do Mass Effect in the way that they promised it to be, which is, you play the first Mass Effect, you bring the character throughout the whole trilogy, and your choices matter all throughout the game. Even today, with enormous studios, it would be super ambitious. But I think what really hampered it was the fact that the development time was short. Because it was all released in the same console generation. It feels very much like you're playing. I don't know. It feels like you're just playing 3 games that came out for the Xbox 360, and like even down to fundamental design choices and like art styles and stuff like that. Like it's very shaped by the capacity of the console, and maybe that's just because I know what the capacities of the console were, but like things like you never fight more than 10 enemies at the same time, and there's a lot of waves of enemies that's just spawn in. That's due to the Xbox 360 only having half a gig of RAM. It can't process the things, and or like your characters look very detailed, but the textures are very samey and very low quality if you look close at them, and they have all these tricks and it's very well done, but they have all these tricks to hide.
Gig back then, wow.
It was absurd. It was bad. It was low at the time, but the like it just people made games with that limitation in mind. These days they have like 16 gigs, I think, but it's still shared. But either way, my point is that it feels very much like Mass Effect is a series of games made for a specific console, not even a specific audience, a specific console. And Mass Effect 3 feels kind of rushed in that department because, yeah, I mean, they couldn't delay it.
Thinking about modern video games, it's actually insane thinking that Mass Effect 3 came out only 5 years after Mass Effect 1.
Yeah.
It's so
100%.
wild in modern terms. I wish games were smaller again. I wish they were less overcomplicated and could come out every other year again without it being like this.
I mean, the thing with those games though is that they're not small. I mean, and this gets to a modern development issue.
I don't mean small in scale. I mean small as in like
development
production.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think what I was gonna say is just like people think that games have gotten like bigger in terms of like their scope, and that's why they take a long time to develop. Yeah, but they haven't. The issue is just that like the bar, the word I'm going to use here is like a quality bar, but what I mean by that is not like it's a good game or it's a bad game, but just like the fidelity of things is so much higher and so much more resource intensive that making something now that meets standards takes longer than it used to. And there's obviously that meme that people post where they're like, I want shorter games made by less people who get paid more to do less. And I mean it. Like people post stuff like that, but the truth of the matter is that actually is completely unfeasible because people don't actually want that.
Well, the
they
people
probably mean that, but that doesn't. They're not the.
Well,
like I would take
democracy.
I would take
representative democratic. Fuck.
I would take Pentiment. I would take Pentiment over Outer Worlds.
Sure, but Pentiment took forever to develop as well. Like, that's
but it's a team of like
getting
20 people.
Sure, it was made by 20 people, but it also took, I think, multiple years to make, and was a grueling process. So, like the
no overtime though. They didn't do churns
or
not churn.
That's great. But what I'm saying is like the era of making a game in a year just is, regardless of what your scope is, basically impossible now because of all of the different aspects of game making that you need to do to even get something released nowadays. It is not as simple as just like game jamming out a game with you and your four buddies in a garage anymore. Like the way that games were made in the 90s and the early 2000s is just fundamentally not possible with the amount of resources you need to even put out something that like might not even be technologically advanced anymore. Like it is hard to get a game out in that amount of time nowadays, especially with the amount of scrutiny that games have on them. And that's not, defending the buggy, terrible state of AAA gaming. But it is one of those things where it's like when people say like, oh, I want smaller games and I want them to come out more quickly. It's like there is a barrier now. I think people don't understand what they're asking for when they say something like that. And they also don't know, exactly the reasons why games take so long to make and why they're so expensive and all the work that goes into it. Especially when people are like, oh, game budgets are too big. Why does Assassin's Creed have a $40 million bazillion dollar budget? But then at the same time, they're like, we want devs to be paid well. And it's like, yeah, but what do you think the budget comes from? Like that is paying people's salaries. That's expensive. Like that is what it is. And even then they're still not being paid enough. So it's like, I think there's a gap in knowledge between what people say they want and what they actually want when it comes to video games and game design. Just because like the entire market has changed from what we were used to when we were making really tangible, concrete, progress year over year with old consoles and older games, and just development practices in general.
I think the PC games in particular have are very different than console games. So what I'm about to say is mostly about PC games. But with time, and this I think it was always going to happen. With time, there's a bigger divide between between AAA and indie developers and smaller games. What happens is so there's this reality with when a new game comes out, it's competing with a backlog of games that that you can play games with 20 years that came out 20 years ago or maybe more, and new games come out, and if they're not as good as that, then you might as well play the old one, right? But the word here is as good as. What does it mean to be as good as? And that's where I think the divide comes up. Because in AAA terms, for a long time, all that they banked on the graphics so much because it was the easy sell. Like marketing would do its job, so people could see the game and that could have eyes on it and be like, okay, this game is coming out. Why would I play it? And then they have good graphics, so I might as well. The marketing relies on that, and then people start gauging their purchasing decisions based on what marketing shows, right? Which is normal. And it doesn't mean that the new Far Cry is better than the original Far Cry, and people might still like the old Far Cry better than they do the new one, but they still buy the new game because it's another one to play, and maybe they replay the old one every once in a while. But AAA games rely so much more on, or have relied so much more on graphics than indie games because they can just throw money at the wall and then just be in balloon the development cycle. That doesn't work as well in indie games because the marketing is not there to help them out, and also because they can't necessarily as easily have good graphics. So what happens is that indie audiences are just they're self-filtered, or at least this is the way I perceive it anyway. Indie audiences are self-filtered to be more discerning of what they play. So basically a non-discerning player can like indie games just as much as a discerning player, because tastes are relative and everybody likes what they like. But a non-discerning player is not going to look out for indie games. They're not going to be I'm going to read the forums. I'm going to be on like reading the news and what is being developed, and like they're not going to find the hidden gems that are out there for indie games.
We had
right?
something pretty depressing about this like dynamic happen like last week where I was doing a vote for the next indie game and I just kind of threw Hi-Fi Rush in there because it clocked as one, and I didn't really look that closely because I'm doing blind Let's Plays and all that, and it won the vote, and not a single person questions its inclusion in the poll, and it's literally from the creators of Evil Within. Like, it's not an indie game in any universe, but it's like AAA games are so homogenous in their appearances and their production that this game just not looking like that, like, well, it's obviously an indie game, and like none of us checked.
Well,
like,
so
it's like,
I have like I have a take on this that I think is kind of different from what both of you have to say about it, but I think that this in itself is sort of a false dichotomy. Because we just said like, oh, AAA games like look really homogenous, and indie games like don't have to use their graphics for marketing. But actually, I think most indie games really do market themselves off their graphics. It's just they're not marketing themselves off of realism or like high fidelity graphics.
Yeah, a lot of them are specifically
like,
chasing a certain aesthetic that sells.
A certain aesthetic.
100%.
Exactly.
It's like how the entire early generation of Kickstarter video games were all tabletop. They were all top-down isometric CRPGs over and over and over and over again because they were marketing to a very specific underserved market.
Well, I mean, you have that like kind of I say this endearingly because I've played most of them, but like artsy gimmick-based physics sad platformers are like literally a genre in and of themselves, and I'm sure that me saying that the idea of a game or what a game like that looks like popped into your head. Like,
of course,
games, indie games as well, are chasing graphical fidelity. It's just a different kind of fidelity, and there is sort of a scale here of just like ever increasing change where it's like Limbo I don't think would sell as well today versus all of these games that have been announced just this past year. They're like, well, this is like the embroidery sad platformer, and this is the sad platformer that's entirely 2D animated, and this one was animated on cells. It's like when I hear all that stuff, it all is just saying like we're doing better graphics now, but with an art style instead of just going for like more polygons, which is fine. Like, it's creative, it's cool, but it's still ultimately the same cynical, like chasing something shiny, I think, that people accuse AAA games of being. And in that regard, it's kind of strange to be in this spot we're in right now with modern games, because I don't actually think that fidelity is like a problem. Like, if someone tells me, $60 million of the latest Assassin's Creed budget goes into it looking good, like, okay, cool. Like, good graphics are cool. Like, I'm not going to sit here on a pedestal and be like, no, good graphics aren't cool. But also, I know that people have a very bad memory of like what technology has progressed in, and like people have a really poor memory of understand of like what graphics even look like. When Elden Ring came out, people were saying it looked like a PS3 game, and I was like, you don't remember what the PS3 looks
wild.
Like, people literally
somebody needs to be
don't
sat
know.
down in front of a copy of Too Human.
Yeah, exactly. Like, people don't remember at all. Or like there was a game recently, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it came out and someone was like, man, like low poly 3D like this is so embarrassing. Like, we got past this in the N64 era. And I remember thinking like, fuck, man, I wish the N64 looked this good. Like, oh my god. Like, you do not remember what it was like to play these games. So like, it's just, there's also the fact that like people don't connect with the past. So when people are saying like, I want worse looking games made by less like teams of lesser people that are paid more to do less, and I'm serious about it. Like, I'm like, bro, I know for a fact you've never played an N64 game. You are lying to yourself when you say that, because I see how people react when they see a game that looks like maybe a generation behind. People are like, oh man, Bloodborne is unlookable. It's terrible look. It looks like a PS2 game. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You truly have no frame of reference for what old games are like, you know, these so-called graphical, like worse graphical fidelity games that look like. And it's just like, it all goes back to the fact that people don't play games that aren't new. Even people who say that they're like retro enthusiasts, or people who say that they like all video games from all eras, 95% of the games that they're playing are like really heavily recency biased.
Yeah.
And this is less so on PC, because obviously on PC things have a longer shelf life. But for the most part, like with console generations getting longer, like people just don't have the exposure to older games to understand how far the games have evolved and like what they're asking for when they say like, I want X, Y, or Z.
I think old games, their appeal to the wider audience is always going to be reliant on either nostalgia or gameplay, because
yeah,
maybe there's exceptions to this, but like, how else would people keep going back to old games?
yeah.
Like I mean,
not everyone is going to be a video game historian like we are, you know, like not everyone is playing them to understand game design or like how things have evolved or whatever. It's totally true.
Yeah.